welcome back from the break. And I'm so excited to introduce our panelists. So I'm Julia Reichel again. I run the opioid response program for neonatal abstinence syndrome at Margaretville Hospital. And this is our lived experience panel. This is always the most impactful panel at any summit, just because whenever we do a summit, people come back and are like, oh, I remember that person said this thing, and it suddenly clicked for me how it is, how things are to experience, right? As professionals, sometimes we distance ourselves from what's really happening to protect ourselves from the fact that life is really hard. And so today we've asked folks who have generously decided to bring themselves forward and talk about what they've experienced, and also they're all professionals as well, who have brought this experience into their work and enlivened their work and allowed themselves to have a reservoir of kindness, which is super hard, right? Yeah. It's not easy. And so that's part of what they're bringing to you, is how to live through hell and understand how to turn that into an engine to reach other people and help them live through hell so that we can all survive and take care of each other. All right, I'm going to introduce my folks. Okay, so first, this is Mary Lou Bruns, certified nursing assistant and aide. Yeah. Yes, at Bassett Medical Center in Cooperstown. Yeah. Okay, and where do you live? I didn't ask you. Skanevis. Okay, I'm not sure we can hear you.
Skanevis, New York.
Awesome.
But I'm originally from Delaware County.
That's right, yeah.
So now I'm in Otsego County.
Yeah, where were you, what part of Delaware?
Davenport, particularly, Oneonta area. But
awesome.
Oneonta's Otsego.
Cool.
But I grew up in Delaware County.
Okay, cool. And your kids in the audience cheering you on?
Yeah, I have. Let's go, Mom! That's my oldest. She's 17, and we are complete opposites.
As you can tell.
As you can tell, but.
I love my mom.
Hey. But she grew up with me through a lot of this stuff and witnessed a lot of the things as I went through life. So I feel like she's a good support for me.
We're so happy to have both of you here. So awesome. Okay, so then we have Erin Chapyak. Did I do it right?
I'm so happy.
Oh my gosh, yay.
So
lift that thing up, we have to hear you.
Talk it.
Oh,
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Erin. So Erin is a certified peer recovery advocate and postpartum doula and breastfeeding expert and some other stuff, right? At lactation expert, sorry, at Samadhi Recovery Center in Kingston. And talk a little bit about, just in a sentence, what you describe your job as.
My job is a multifaceted plethora of support in all modalities and ways possible.
Yeah. Erin and I were just at a training in a completely different context where we were in a room full of 70 therapists last week, all weekend long, learning how to experience somatically the world. It was wild.
It was.
Yeah. We'll talk more. Okay. And then there's Amber Mansfield, also a certified recovery peer advocate, postpartum doula, lactation specialist, and a bunch of other stuff at Samadhi as well. In a sentence.
I'm just going to use 2 words, empowering and impactful, for my job.
Yeah. So, okay. We've invited you here to talk. We've sort of decided who's going to talk first. So this is about our lives. So I'm going to ask, and Erin and Amber, you might be able to tell, kind of come as a pair. They're buds, and they're buds for a reason. And I want you to sort of talk about your journeys and why parenting and pregnancy and recovery are so important to you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here and to be open to this information and this knowledge. So I am a child of incestuous molestation. I had a very traumatic childhood, and I was also born into addiction. And that was a big part of my life, my whole entire life. I had numerous types of trauma that happened to me throughout my life because of what happened and because of situations I put myself in, my addiction, the gambit. I'm sure you hear similar, type stories from the people that you serve. So I like to hang out at the bottom. I didn't have a rock bottom. I liked to be at the bottom. And it wasn't until I was 36 where I was kind of like forced into the situation of like I had to go to recovery, get into recovery. I wanted nothing to do with it whatsoever. Also, I don't have any children, but I will get to that further along in my story. So I don't like to dive too deep into it because I know like we all share so many similarities, and I know we all know, you know, there's so many, you know, there's so many similarities amongst people, you know, with addiction and trauma. So instead of going off of like what we all know, when I went into treatment, I was miserable. I didn't talk to people for months. I was extremely sick. I'd been living on the street. I lost everything. I went into treatment. I wanted nothing to do with it. If you had told me 4 years ago that I was going to be sitting here talking to people, like I even did another talking event last week, and I always bring this up, I would have said like, I hated just like me. I didn't want to hear you. I didn't. I was like, you know, there were women in like my rehab that were like, that had a car, and we're all like, yeah, I had an addiction. And I was like, you.
Yes.
Like, I don't care. Like, give me the here. So this is not how I envisioned my life to be today. And I do have a car, and I have my own apartment, and I have all those things. I have 2 dogs, and I have 2 children now too. So, so I came into that, and it was like the really cookie cutter thing. I hated meetings. I didn't want to hear any of that crap. I was forced into it. Harm reduction did not exist in my addiction. You know, like I joke with my friends that I used to use with now, those ones that are still alive, because fentanyl and xylazine was up and coming when I was an addict, and thank God it was, because I wouldn't be sitting here today. If it wasn't for Narcan, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't be. And if it wasn't for MAT, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
MAT. Just explain what it is.
Medically assisted treatment, methadone, Suboxone, Subutex, anyway, Vivitrol. So without that, I wouldn't be sitting here. So what was I saying? I get off on tangents. So if those things didn't exist, I wouldn't be here. But none of this, there wasn't, I was in Peekskill, New York, Westchester County. None of the supports that we have up in Ulster County and up here exist or existed then. So like there were no options, or there were no safe needle exchanges. There was absolutely none of that. If you wanted methadone, you went to a little like makeshift old trailer in the back of Peekskill Hospital, and like in the woods. And I remember always getting stung by bees and ticks. So like that's where that was at then. So like fast forward, I was in rehab for 2 years. I was like the unicorn. COVID happened while I was there. I was super up. I had a super up mentality, just total polar opposite of the person I am today. And that's why I was there for 2 years. People are like, oh my God, why were you there for 2 years? Because I was really basically, and I had no other options. I was a Westchester County rat, definitely not from the nice parts of Westchester County. I know that there's a big stigma about Westchester. This is not where I was from. And they were like, well, you have to change your residency and come up here. So like I had no idea what I was doing. I'm up here. I'm in Ulster County now. I'm an Ulster County resident. No place to go, no friends. I don't have family. So I had no choice. So I like had to like, you know, that fight thing came in, and I said, all right, I gotta get this going. So I ended up like crossing over, you know, the teeter-totter into like then diving full on into the whole recovery practice, and thinking like, and listening to the counselors who were teaching me, who were helping me, and listening to the other people, because I met so many other people while being in rehab for 2 years, that people who had my type of trauma, it was like not spoke about. The counselors in my rehab did not want to address my sexual trauma because it was too much for them to handle. They were not equipped for it.
Yes.
So
let's just hold that one for a second,
Yeah.
because I know that's the thing that you're saying, and I just want it to really land.
yeah,
Like,
I just sit with that.
she couldn't
Longer.
talk about what happened to her in treatment, okay? Because the folks working with her were too scared to hold it.
Yeah.
It sucks. How are you supposed to get help when the person trying to help you is too terrified to face what you've survived? You've survived, right? Okay, go on. I just wanted to.
No,
booknote
thank
that.
you. Thank you for doing that, because we talk about how hard it is. Like, it's a big thing of, like, once you get sober, how you feel your feelings. Well, it was a lot of feeling to feel. And then to have people be like, we're just going to stick a Band-Aid on you for now so that you're good, and then we're going to release you back into the wild. So, like, that felt super great. Really felt me, really established trust there. So I got through it, though. So, like, I'm sitting here, right? So, like, you know, I was able to finally get out. I went to a transitional housing place. This is where I met my most favorite person on the planet. And things started to change. I wanted to help people who had this trauma, because obviously people don't talk about it. It's really awkward. It's uncomfortable. It happened with my mom. It was a very uncomfortable situation. When Julia came to me about being a doula, having these connections, this is like kind of where, in a roundabout way, I'm going to bring it back to parenting, even though I'm not a parent. Like, I had no connection with the person who was supposed to protect me and take care of me. None whatsoever. My perception of what love and shelter and care was as a child from birth was wildly skewed. Wildly. And still is to this very day. I still have trouble, but I'm learning, thanks to my dear friend. So I wanted to run from anything that had to do with mother-child relationships, because I had no understanding of them whatsoever. And I dove into it head first. And it opened up a plethora of trauma and craziness for me, thinking like, oh my God, like, I wasn't held when I was a child. My mother left the building. Like, she disappeared. So nobody held me until they found my dad. Like, you know, like, all these little things that I learned from doing the postnatal
Little
doula.
things?
Well, they're little, like, these tidbits about the, you know, like, how important these bonds are that are created, like chemical reactions in brains, and like this wild stuff that, like, the mother-child experience is supposed to be. I had none of that. So I'm like, oh my God, like, back to how I felt as an addict. I'm like this shell of a person. I have no soul. I am evil. I am heartless. I am broken. So because of the support, though, that I had around me, working at Samadhi, like, I met David taking the Serpa class while I was in transitional housing, because I was like, I want to help people, because I don't want people to go through what, like, the I went through. So I met David and I took the Serpa thing, and now I'm like, you know, amongst everything, I'm the outreach director there. I've gotten so many amazing, I could cry just because I owe you so much. Samadhi has helped me. I was able to handle, like, these trainings, like our somatic experiencing training. I'm, like, able to handle these things now because I have such great resources. In the process of all this, my bestie is in Able House with me, getting her kids back. And we're getting closer, and I'm seeing, like, these connections that a mother has with their kids. Like, and I always felt so bad for the girls in rehab who would be crying because they felt so bad for they let their kids down. And I was thinking to myself, like, I wish I had would know that, like, one iota of that was felt for me.
Yeah.
Like, one iota. And I would be so, as much as I run, and, like, I know it would be surprising that I would be running from these things, given what my job is to hold compassion for people. If somebody would drop a tear, I would want to, like, run out the window. But I felt like so, like, I had to, like, talk to them as if I was, like, their child and be like, no, like, you're doing so good. You care. Like, you care. They may be mad now, but you care. Like, if I only had one iota of it, spiral off into my own thing. So that's when, like, things, my wheel started changing about this parenting thing. And, I got to see the kids come and have visits, and I got to see Amber's interactions with her kids, and then, like, we got them back. I say we because everything, like, is a we with us. And then we got them back. And, like, they're my nephews. And, like, they're, like, the kids I'll never have. And I see the struggles that she deals with having them back. And the struggles that she went through with CPS and the stigma and just, like, all the of, like, the whole system that she went through. And it killed me because, like, I'm her best friend, and I know that she's crying at night because she wants her kids back. And that's not being communicated in a room of officials who don't really get it. I mean, these are kids who are numbers on a piece of paper in a county, who's in a county on a bigger scale of the state, that's on a bigger scale of the country, demographed out, and then read back to us. So I don't want to, I don't know where we are with time, but that's what, so that is what is so important. Like, she brought that, we're talking about pregnancy and parenting. She brought that to me because I didn't have any of that, so I have a greater understanding. So with working with this grant, like, I was like, yeah, I could totally get in on that. Like, I know what it's like to be an addict. Like, that's easy. I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to be a lot of these things. But I have a better understanding now. I will never understand fully, but I have a better understanding now because of our shared experience. And I'm going to toss it over to you, my friend.
let's just take a moment. Thank you. I want the audience also to just hold, it's a lot, okay? So I want to tend to you and Erin, oh man, right? Like, thank you for sharing. Yeah. It's a big deal, right? It's a big deal to be trusted with these stories. So please hold them and remember them and share them. Share the fact that, yeah, you got that mom stuff going on, man. Like, clearly you know what it's about.
I'm candid because that's the only way to make the point. Anybody can stand up in front of people and say literally anything. A printed speech from Google. I mean, anybody can spit out anything. But I think that if we're really candid about it and real about it, this is what happened. This is like a microcosm of what happened. And there's no other better way to try to get you to understand that than that's just, it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Erin. Amber.
So I just want to touch on the stigma thing that she said. That's definitely, it's a big thing around here. During my recovery, I was frowned upon because I was an addict who lost her kids. But in my recovery, I was trying to get the point across that that's who I was. That's not who I am today. So I myself was born into addiction. My parents were using. I was taken from them probably by the age of 4, placed into foster care. My mom couldn't have cared less that I was there. She just ran off and continued doing what she was doing. And my father had stepped up and got me and my sister out of foster care and back into his care. And I think that's kind of what hit me the hardest when I lost my kids. That was my bottom. That was my rock bottom. It was enough. I had my fun, if that's what you want to call it. But it was over when I lost my kids. I started out just smoking weed, doing coke. It progressed, and that was at the age of 12 that I started this because, my dad was a single parent, and he was always at work to support me and my sisters, so I had all the time in the world to run the streets and get into stuff. Granted, he's a great father, he did what he had to do, but he was never home because he had to support us, so I was just constantly roaming the streets, doing what I had to do.
Want to flag that poverty thing?
Yes.
Right? Great dad, doing
Yes.
all the right things, check, 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 check. And, just get a better job that pays 3 times as much, Dad. Come on, just do it. No problem, right? Yeah, I just again, for us, like, it working as hard as he could, right? And it's not enough, and it's not his damn fault. Okay.
Absolutely. So, probably around the age of 24, I had moved on to harder drugs. I started out sniffing heroin. I progressed into injecting it. My kids' daily needs were met, but I wasn't there, right? I was there physically, but not mentally. I was always in the bathroom, not doing what I had to do as a mother, like spending time with them, taking them to the park, so on and so forth, because I was too into my addiction. I couldn't even come out of the bathroom. So probably around the age of 29, I was arrested. I was selling drugs just to take care of my daily needs so that I could get my fix. I was arrested and charged with endangering the welfare of a child and criminal sale of possession because I made sales while my kids were there. My kids were taken from me. They were placed with family. My kids were acting out a lot during the time of this, probably because they just lost their mother. They were always with me. So my family couldn't handle it and sent them into foster care. All of this as well, I'm in jail, rehab, and Able House with Aaron. It was a constant fight every day with CPS because of the stigma, who I am and my background. But that, like I said again, that's not who I am today. I'm here, I'm fighting, I'm doing everything I have to do to get my kids home to me, which did end up happening. I got them back November 16th, and they had been home. It was a very long 2 years and very sad and depressing, and there was constant guilt because of my addiction. During the time of it, I couldn't even fathom losing my kids or anything like that. I was just too deep into my addiction. But like I said, my rock bottom was losing them. I was like, this is enough. I have to get my life in order. And it kept playing in my head what happened to me as a child. I was placed in foster care. I was ripped from my parents. My mom didn't care about me. So I was putting my kids through what I went through as a kid, and that was even killing me even more. So
what changed? How did it start to go up again?
Just getting sober. I didn't even do that on my own. Like I said, I was arrested and brought right to the jail. I was on misdemeanor probation.
Yeah, take a minute. This is not easy.
I'm a little nervous too. I'm horrible at public speaking, so I'm sorry.
Actually, you're fantastic at public speaking.
You're doing so good. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, so I was taken into custody for probably 18 months, and then I had finally got my housing, gotten my kids. During my kids being in foster care, my little one received several injuries. 2 broken arms at one time, marks to his neck, sprained feet. So he currently has a settlement coming to him. I was even demanding my children be removed from there and placed into another home, and I was rejected, stigma. She don't know what's good for her kids, and so on and so forth. So that was a daily struggle. Erin was there with me for most of that. I cried on her shoulders a few times. But like I said, it happened. I got my kids back. A lot of people think that it cannot happen.
Yeah.
And it can. It's a daily fight. It's hard. Even when you have a worker that is constantly nagging you and making it harder, just push through it because good is yet to come.
It's hard to believe that.
The day I left that court with my kids, I felt complete again. I'm gonna cry.
Of course, yes.
So, and my life has changed tremendously for the better. I've had a car. I was one of those with no car.
We went together, screaming in the car dealership that we got cars.
I have a car. I have 2 jobs. Bank accounts, credit cards. Like, my kids are gonna have wonderful birthdays. My oldest wants to go to the city for his birthday. My youngest, he doesn't know what he wants to do yet. But we'll be able to do that. And you know what? I'll be able to mentally and physically be there and enjoy this time with him. Granted, yes, for 5 years I was there, but I wasn't there. But I have all the time in the world to make that back up to them. You know, my oldest is 9 and my youngest is 7, and they do have trauma from it. They know, they didn't know exactly what I was doing, but they had an idea. They're not stupid at all. You know, they knew that their mom barely came out of the bathroom, and when I did, I probably looked crazy. So I just wanted to get the point across that, you know, I was raised into addiction. I was brought into addiction. I was taken. I lost my kids, and I got them back. Just please get the word out there that it is possible. Thank you so much.
So again, this is, you can hear me, right? Hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Getting your kids back isn't a miracle. It's a thing that is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And yet it's like climbing a mountain, you need a buddy, right? Like I do want to just like highlight the fact that like clearly, again, it's about kindness and love, right? And we find it where we can find it,
Yeah.
and then we make it work. And that's why we need to be there for our folks, right? Be that person for the person sitting in front of you. Like, see how it works. We can do this. People get their kids back, and they can be like, have wonderful lives that they would never have dreamed they would have had. And it's just, yeah. So I want to just thank you again for sharing. And I just, again, want to say it's not easy to share this kind of thing. And this is a gift. All right, Mary Lou.
Well, that was emotional.
Yeah. Take a sec, because we've all been through it, right?
Yeah. So I'm Mary Lou. I'm 39 years old. Brief life story. I had, middle class parents, worked all the time, provided everything. I really didn't have a lot of trauma growing up, but I was very naive. My parents were very naive. I was a little small town girl, and wanted to always be at New York City and like get out of here and not going to be in this hick town. So lo and behold, I hung out with the wrong people, and I got interest into the glamorous life of drug dealers, and then I ended up being a drug addict. And I remember when I first went to rehab, the counselors didn't really know what to do with me because I didn't have any crazy trauma. Like, so they kind of were like, oh, you're fine. Like, you're just a brat and you choose to live that way. I do, but then I look and I'm like, I did have emotional stuff. I might not have some crazy stuff, but so parent-wise, my mother was from alcoholics. She grew up with a family of alcoholics, and she had to run the household, and she had 6 little brothers, and she was very unemotionally available to me, so I did not have that mother bond in my life. And she wasn't I think she was spiteful of her children. She had kids because, dad wanted kids. I don't think she really wanted kids. She wanted to live her own life, and she spent her whole childhood raising children. She didn't want to raise more children, I think. So I didn't have that mother bond to begin with. And so I never thought I wanted children. For a long time, that was not on the table for me. But behold, I got through high school. I didn't start using until college. So I went to college quite young, very naive. Dabbled in little things, at the bar with friends. Everyone does a little Coke, or here, take a little pill, and I didn't have any idea because of the education-wise in the community. We had DARE or whatever come in and say, don't smoke, don't do drugs. But I didn't understand the consequences of, I started doing opioids at the age of 18. I didn't understand that you could physically become addicted to them. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I never was told that.
I just want to highlight that, right? Like, it's just the fact that, like, DARE, there was a place for DARE, right?
Yeah.
But like, it didn't tell you what you needed to know,
Yeah.
which was these things might happen.
Yeah. And I didn't grow up in an area. You didn't see heroin addicts in Davenport, New York. That's not a thing. You don't see homeless people in, well, there's a couple in Oneonta, but it's not prevalent. There's not hookers on the street. Like, I had no idea what drug use was. To me, it was glamorous. It was, Kurt Cobain and all the celebrities that did drugs, like, this is a glamorous, cool thing. I never knew the bad part of it. So to me, it was like a good thing. So, a few years of that, you learn, hey, this is not a good thing. And then I'm like, one day I wake up and I'm like, holy shit, I'm actually sick. Yeah, you're addicted. Okay. So I kind of walked into addiction with blinders on, very naive.
I just want to highlight that because not everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
When you talk a little bit about what you mean there, it's withdrawal.
Because people assume, I feel like as I went through treatment and recovery, people assume I knew what I was getting into, but I really didn't. Like, I did think it was very harmless, and I thought it was just playtime. I guess it's just because I feel like the area that we lived in, there was not a lot of education about that sort of thing.
So you were physically dependent. That was
Yes.
the thing. And just
And
to emphasize.
I didn't realize that was
Right. You
possible.
get super, super sick, and you think,
Yes.
maybe I have a cold. Oh, wait, it goes away the next time.
Yes.
I have an opiate. Oh, God.
And I had a lot of mental health too. So I remember the first few times I did opiates, I wasn't getting the mental health treatment that I needed. I live in a small town. There was no access back then. And I was like, oh, this makes me feel better. I'm going to do this every day. So what's the deal with that? What's the problem? It's a prescription. So yeah, anyways, about 8 years started progressing with the heroin because then the big opiate crackdown happened. You couldn't get pills anymore. So then, well, if you want to do your thing, you have to use heroin. And that big pharmaceutical company in Hobart, New York, was a huge problem.
Covidian.
Yes.
Gonna name some names.
That was a huge
Mallinckrodt.
supplier of, I don't know how or who.
Not
but-
sponsoring this summit. Just for folks
Well,
who
good, they're giving back.
Just so I do like to say this in the Catskills region, right? Like in
Yes.
Hobart, New York, there's an enormous manufacturer of pharmaceuticals, and lots of people stole pharmaceuticals from the factory. It makes total sense.
Yes.
Right. Just want to contextualize this.
I got off that. So anyways, I did go through treatment I was in active use for about 10 years. And the longer I was in use, the worse it got. I held it for a long time. I had very toxic relationships. I had 3 children. I have my oldest daughter with my high school sweetheart who ended up being very toxic, alcoholic. We started using together. Then I went to another relationship that was super toxic. And so that's where a lot of my trauma happened, was in my adult years with relationships. And like I said, I couldn't even tell you personally, like, why I thought it was okay to be in those relationships, because I had a good father. I had, good role models. I guess there was something in me that when you're in those situations, it's hard to see that. That's when people are like, just leave. It's not that easy, especially when you have kids.
I just want to be really clear that, like, it wasn't you.
No,
Like,
I know,
right,
but I'm
okay.
saying, to speak on the domestic violence and the
Yes.
mother stuff,
Yep.
a lot of that is, there's a lot more to those situations sometimes. So anyways, I ended up going to treatment a couple times. I never took it seriously. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. That 12-step is not for me. Like, I really tried because I wanted to get clean. And I I was in college for psychology, and because I wanted to be a guidance counselor. I ended up dropping out because of my addiction and my relationships, my toxic relationships. And so finally, I didn't get my kids taken away. My oldest went to live with my parents. They took her because I recognized in myself, I cannot take care of her anymore. You guys need to take her from me so I can go get help. And so they did. And then my other children stayed with their father and some family. I had 3 kids at that time. And so by the time I finally got clean, it took a few rehabs. Rehabs are what, 14 days? You're barely feeling your feelings at 14 days. Like, you're barely, like, going through your sickness and, like, feeling your and then they're like, here, go back out. And very little coping skills, no support system. So needless to say, I fell on my face probably 800 times before I just got sick of being sick and tired. Like that saying, it's a recovery saying, you're sick of being sick and tired. And I never thought it was possible. I was like, I don't even care anymore. I just didn't even care to live. I didn't care to get clean. I just didn't give a And I think the only reason I did it really was because of my children. So that mother instinct is the only thing that kept me alive. I think if I didn't have them, I would be dead in a ditch, and that would have been it. But I felt that guilt that my kids need me, and I don't want to be that scumbag. And so I didn't have my kids, and at that point, and then I got clean. I went to a long-term facility. I stayed there for 2 years. I had to go out to the Albany area, and that's what it took for me to see, oh, I can live like this. Because okay. I miss you. Bomb ass. Okay. But I also felt guilty because she was like, look at her. Stop it. You're being. So anyways, I ended up getting clean, and then I got with the boy next door. And I did. And he was a great support. I was newly sober. I was very open and honest with him about it. I had finally found a Suboxone provider. I had never really been on Suboxone long term, or I never took it seriously. I would go and get my script and maybe take it a week, and then I'd relapse or sell it for drugs, or all the things that everyone says you do when you're on maintenance therapy and people are against it. I did misuse it a lot in the beginning. But then I found Tabasco Healthcare in Crohonks, and Dr. Grovenberg was sort of a therapist to me. I love him like a father. That man is great. So he was a big part of, like, look, you're doing good, and talking to me like a person, not just give me my money, here's your pills, go away. He really cares and listens, and without maintenance therapy, I don't brag. I work in a hospital now. I don't tell people I'm on it. Most people in my life don't know that I take maintenance therapy, but without it, I could not have a normal life. I mean, chemically, 10 years of drug use, my brain was changed. So for me to even wake up and feel normal every day, I have to have this medication, which that's fine. I don't see it any different.
More than fine. It's I like to say this, it's heroic, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're doing the thing that works.
Yeah, it works for me, definitely. But, there's a stigma of you're not clean. You're not clean.
Yes, that's why we're here. That is why we're here. So let's just underscore that, right? Folks in recovery who are using medication-assisted treatment are often told, you're not sober.
Yeah.
And that is something that we need to change, okay? In this room, please hold this, hear it, tell your friends. It often comes
Yeah.
from folks in recovery
And NA,
themselves.
yeah.
Yes. And so we are here to say, look, medication-assisted treatment is sobriety. There are many paths to recovery. Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I do want, we have about 10 minutes. I
Yeah.
want to take some questions, and I do want you to talk about what happened when you were
So
pregnant.
when I was on Suboxone, I got pregnant with my first child, my fourth child with the boy next door. And I was on Suboxone. My previous kids, I was still at the point in my drug use that I wasn't really using during my pregnancy. I could stop while I was pregnant. But now I'm like, oh shit, I'm on Suboxone. I can't not take this. Like, I was petrified. I had only been clean maybe a year when I got pregnant with him. I had a very supportive partner, and we went to Bassett Hospital. I had switched my, they started providing me medication there because the obstetrician taking care of me wanted to be the one giving me my medication. So I let them do that. That was a mistake. The nurses there were disgusting, rotten to me, treated me horrible. I was treated like I might as well have been smoking crack every day and going there, because that's how I was treated.
While pregnant, while being on the gold standard medication
Yeah.
for the treatment.
And I was really actually completely sober for about a year when this happened.
You work there now too, right?
I do work there now.
Woo! Let's just give
I
them a
never
bubble.
thought I would, work there, but it was just, there needs to be education in the facilities, and in the hospital in particular, especially in Cooperstown. I know that we're not really talking about up in Otsego County, but that's part of
No, absolutely mention it. Yes.
Okay. There's no, the providers and the nurses, they don't have sensitivity training. They have no idea. So we get these people all the time. I work in SCU, which is a sort of step down from ICU. And we get all these people, here's this one again. It's a frequent flyer. The alcoholics that come in all the time that have, a heart problem, or the drug addicts that need valve replacements, and then they go back out and get high, and then they come back in again because they're not taking care of themselves. And I started saying to the nurses and providers, listen, why don't you try to think of this as they're people? Or if you can't, and I mean, it's messed up, I have to say that.
It's messed up, you have to say that.
It's
Thank you for
true.
saying that.
So I try to advocate for them in a way that I can. I'm not a doctor, or I don't have any important title for them to listen to me, but it does help to say, when a nurse is frustrated with somebody going through detox, I'll say, listen, let me go in there and deal with it, because I can relate to them. So a lot of the time, I was the one people came to help with those situations, or to deal with those situations. And I always say I have a heart for addicts and alcoholics, because I know what it's like. And some of them are going to keep coming back. And you know what? It's still your job to treat them, no matter how they are. Because there's a lot of people who aren't addicts and alcoholics that are too. So yes, I've been clean for 10 years now. And I have 6 kids. I had all the last 3 I had on Suboxone. Needless to say, I didn't go back to Bassett for the next 2. I went to Albany Med. And the CWA scale is the other thing I was going to say. Is a very flawed way of scoring children. It's first of all, the nurses let me do the scoring, and I was like, well, I don't want my baby to suffer. So every time they looked uncomfortable. Well, yeah, that's how you would score him. I was showing my daughter this, how you score the baby. And I was scoring my own child, which is super unprofessional because I don't have an objective. So they started my 2 kids on morphine. That was a horrible, disgusting thing. They had to stay in the hospital extra, and then we ended up taking them home, and I had to give them morphine like every 2 hours around the clock. It was super stressful. I had
the midwife in the audience, who is the presenter later, is like, you had to do what now?
Yeah.
What? We'll learn about the best standards of care
Because
after
if
lunch.
I didn't want my kid in the hospital for 6 months, they gave me the morphine, take him home, give it to him. So, I've experienced I've seen a lot of bad, flawed things, and I still see it to this day, but I try to do my little tiny bit that I can to help and make awareness, because we don't have somebody in our hospital training these people, these providers, like they don't have sensitivity training, at least not that I'm aware of, for mothers or substance abuse or any of that. I do not work on the OB floor. I don't know if things are still the same there. I hear that they are. There's a reason I don't work on the OB floor. I refuse to. But when I went to Albany Med, I think just because it was a bigger city, they immediately were like, they didn't give my child morphine right away. They did the scoring. They held off as much as they could. So my last daughter that was born at Albany Med did not have to have medication assisted therapy, because they let me hold her and do all the comfort stuff. Bassett didn't do that. They immediately administered morphine like the first few hours he was alive.
Which means they took the baby away from the mother
yeah.
and administered the medication. And let's just really underscore that. You couldn't hold your baby.
Yes. And he was in ICU for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I went through a lot of crap, and that was super emotional, and it was all because I was a mom on Suboxone, and I had a child. And I did nothing wrong other than that, which isn't even wrong.
So I just, we're almost at time.
That's my story.
And it's huge. Yeah. And I think the last thing you just said is the thing that, again, that's stigma in action, right? Yeah. I didn't do anything wrong except for that, because the message to Mary Lou, doing the hardest, best thing, is you did something wrong. When in fact, she did exactly the right thing. She sought treatment from an affirming provider for her addiction. She was on it. She did exactly what she needed to do, and she was treated terribly. Her baby was taken away, right?
CPS had to come and hound the shit out of me. They still, to this day. she went through a lot of things. She was, acting up, and every time CPS is called, first thing, oh, you're on Suboxone? So it's still a horrible stigma. No matter that I have 2 full-time jobs, we own a house. I'm a
I bet.
with a car.
I want to take some questions. If we feel comfortable
Yeah.
taking a couple questions, we have about 5 minutes. This presentation is now entitled "The Car."
Yeah.
So, all right, Linda.
What's the normal protocol for Suboxone when you're at?
Yeah, the question was, what's the normal protocol for Suboxone treatment? And that we're going to cover with Laura McCarroll's presentation this afternoon. We softened you up so that you can see how bad it got, so that you can take the good stuff back to your organizations and do it, and so that we can avoid this.
Yeah.
Right? Because these guys are out here on their damn own advocating, right? Like, you're the one who sees folks mistreating folks, and you're like, hey, I'll take this one.
Yeah.
Right? With your body. That's you
Yeah.
in the line of fire. Like,
I've been punched
but right?
Still do
Like,
it.
the vicarious trauma thing is, I mean, it's not just vicarious. Like, you
Yeah.
actually get
Yeah.
physically
Yeah.
injured. Like, it's not, okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. Okay. Other questions? All right, go ahead.
Advice or information on the difference. So I heard you say it's the AA mindset, and that contributes to judgment over understanding, right?
Yeah.
But what we need to do to help shift people's thinking has to do, I think, what I heard, with today's drugs. They change your brain structure.
Yes.
So it's not the same simple 12 steps.
Yes.
We talk, work it through. The medication is about the physiological changes.
100%.
Am I correct? And how do you use that? You guys have been through it. How do you use that to help people shift to understanding of judgment?
Education, but there's always, AA's a lot of old timers. So, I mean, you could educate them. That doesn't mean they receive it, but that's the best way to get the word out is, these things actually physically change your brain chemically. We are different people than we were before we started using, and there's no way to reverse that I know of right now.
I like to just say that who drinks coffee? Your brain is totally different because you are dependent on coffee physically, y'all. Like this, and I just want to say, we don't mean to slag on recovery 12-step, okay? We don't. But there, in our communities of recovery, there are lots of different feelings
That's
and
the
journeys.
first thing they do.
Right.
Go to an AA meeting. Go to an NA
Yes,
meeting.
right.
And these are the things you hear, and they're not helpful. I'm sorry, but they're not.
So many paths, and that means that once you know that abstinence worked for you, that doesn't mean you put it on everyone else. And that's another part about being trauma-informed. So I just wanted to say, it's not like these new drugs change your brain and the old ones don't. Everything changes your brain. Our brains are in communication with the environment. So, yeah. I did see this question here.
I just want to know, in the darkest moment, when you really touch bottom and two moms break out of myself, and Mother's Day is
Yeah, Sunday.
Yes, Mother's Day is Sunday.
but what would you say, what is that one thing or two things you say people who are going through that now, what would be a few things that you would do to encourage them to turn back?
I think, like she said, things get better. Like you said you wanted your message to be. Things get better. And when you're in that headspace, like, first of all, you're an addict already. So you're like, oh, tomorrow I expect to have my new job in my car in my house. And it took me 8 years to get to that point. So the immediate gratification is not there, and things take time, and family doesn't trust you for years and years and years. I still have a sister who does not speak to me because of my addiction, and I've tried several times to reach out to her. She's an RN, you'd think she'd understand a little bit, but no. So I think that's about, you can say, is it gets better, but it takes time, and you have to keep at it, and that gets self-defeating. There's going to be times you're like, it, what am I doing all this for? But you got to just keep going.
So for us in the field, for us that, advocating and, dealing with crisis every day, these stories are beautiful stories. I like to hear success stories because it's self-care for us and it's motivates us.
Yeah.
Especially, I work with the Ulster County Sheriff's Office, and we advocate for individuals in the jail. We actually take them to treatment. And hearing this kind of success story, it's really a lot of motivation.
That's
for
great.
us. And I just want to say thank you for sharing it. I love the word surfer. I work with surfer in my office because it's very relational. There's a lot of success stories with surfers and peer recovery advocates, recovery coaches. And I just want to say thank you for coming here to share the stories because we take it back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's give our panelists all of our gratitude. Thank you so much. We are so grateful. Just one more big hand. Come on. Thanks, folks.